So I don't think you were each introduced, but I'm going to solve that problem by asking each of you to introduce yourselves and talk about what your company does in the sort of the software and electrification or brain of the car space. I'm going to start at the far end. Eileen Gilbert with Mobilinsights. Do that. Tell us who you are and tell us a little bit about what Mobilinsights does, and then we're going to come this way, and then we'll start the panel. But I think that's a good way to get things going.
Great, thanks. So my name is Eileen Gilbert. I'm Vice President, Head of Product Management for Mobilinsights, which is the data business unit of Stellantis. We represent the 14 brands of Stellantis globally, and we make that connected vehicle data available to trusted software partners. So any software play in the connected vehicle space or the software-defined vehicle starts from the data perspective, and getting that data from the vehicle level, from the ECU all the way out to the cloud, and not only the technology stack that is required to provide that data, but also all of the security, all of the consent management. Every piece of data that we make available is first provided an informed consent from the driver to make sure that that data the driver understands what's going on with that data and the value of providing that data to a software partner. So we are the data that powers all of the software for these connected vehicle solutions.
My name is Dipti Vachani. I'm Senior Vice President of the Automotive Business at ARM. So some of you may not have heard of ARM. You'll be hard-pressed to find a car on the road that does not have ARM technology in it. We're pervasive throughout the vehicle, whether it be the ECUs at the endpoints, or domain controllers, or the central graphics processor, or the central ADAS controller that's in a car. That architecture is not only in the car, the ARM architecture, but also in the data center. And so this opportunity for us with our pervasiveness allows us to be able to truly put the system together, that is from cloud to edge. And that's what ARM is doing along with our partners. You may have heard of some of our partners, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, the usual suspects.
Little companies,
those guys. The usual suspects in our space. So we work very closely with them as well as the OEMs to really think through what is the next generation of software-defined vehicles. How does the architecture need to change? How does the architecture need to change in the ECUs as well as in the data center, as well as how does software get reused? The fundamental problem we have is with the explosion of software. If you have to write bespoke software for every vehicle that you have on the road, there's just no way. The problem becomes exponentially too difficult to solve. And so you have to have reuse. And you have to have the ability to write the software before the hardware is ready. And those are fundamental problems that we're trying to solve here at ARM.
Great, thank you.
Very good. So, good day all. Andy Fradkin from Ford Motor Company, Senior Director in Global Data Insights and Analytics. So what do? We very similar here. So got kindred souls on stage. We're really looking at the connected vehicle data as well. And it's really not just what we send to the vehicle in terms of software updates, but also how we take advantage of all that data that's coming back from the vehicle. It's a gold mine. It's a ton of investment that we've done over the years, and we're really seeing how can we reap that gold and find all these different ways to benefit not only the company, but the customer as well.
Great, thank you.
Abdullah Shanti, I'm the Group EVP for IT and Chief Digital Officer for Volkswagen Group of America. I'm involved more into the connected side of the vehicle, and prior to that I was also in Europe responsible for car IT. So as you mentioned, now cars need to talk to back-end systems and figuring out how we could work on that, improve that, and everybody's talking about software in the car, and something needs to drive it and something needs to work with it, and it's really a pretty exciting time, and I think all of the car manufacturing companies are in the same boat. We are in a domain that we are pilgrim in an unholy land.
You said a non-holy land. Well, Abdullah, I can't resist. I'm going to ask you to pick up from that. Why? And again, I think many people in this room know some of the journey that Volkswagen has had on this. But why is this so difficult? Has this software, embracing software, using software, dealing with more sophisticated chips, been so difficult for automakers to get their heads around?
Thank you for the question. That's pretty interesting question, but has a lot of history. In a way, if you think about it, software literally snuck up on us in the cars. When engineers discovered this powerful thing that you could do with electronics, with simple transistor to turn things on and off and stuff like that, and they start adding more functionality in the car to take mechanical complexity with electronics. And electronics obviously needed little programs to make it work, to flip the switches on and off and so on and so forth. And it was really interesting because most car companies have great competency in engineering, but in software, they didn't. They didn't. And everybody started thinking about, okay, well, we really need to build this core competency in software and so on and so forth. But it's more than software. The fundamental problem in automotive, in my personal opinion, is systems engineering. We lack that, okay? Because now all the systems that you had your partners, suppliers, whatever, to build for you, you're responsible to make it work together, okay? You got to launch the car, okay? Before, in the old days, it was like discrete things, the ABS works by itself, the engine control and so on. And now all of a sudden, all that type of stuff have to work together. Somebody need to set the priority, what goes on the CAN bus, a sensor from the ABS system or the engine or whatever, you have to do that. And that become a major challenge for us in automotive. And we needed more skills in systems engineering, software engineering, computer engineering, to be able to address those challenges. And it's not getting easier, we're getting more and more technology in the car. More electronics, more computers, more microprocessors that they need to work together to provide safety and security and performance and so on and so forth. So that's the, I guess, the situation that we're in.
Dipti, I wanted to come, you made a point that if every single car on the road has bespoke software, and I suppose bespoke silicon might go with that, it's just not going to work, which seems pretty clear. I mean, it's a mass production, mass scale business. But I want you to elaborate on that. I mean, again, maybe picking up on Abdullah was saying that you have all this complexity and all the in what people want their cars to do. What can ARM do, or what do you see at ARM about how they're trying to, automakers could better manage that complexity?
Yeah, so about 3 years ago, we released we discussed an open platform called SOFI. And actually it came with a collaboration with Volkswagen at the time, when the CEO of Volkswagen came to us and said, look, you're in every car there is, and it's all ARM-based platforms. Can we create some sort of standard in how the silicon is created? Yes, fine. There's different variations, and you need variations because you have different power and performance points across these vehicles. So I can't put the same silicon in every one. I can't carry that overhead. But if there's some consistency in how the silicon is created, some standard in which we define that, then the software can work consistently across each vehicle and can be scalable, right? And so that was the starting of what was SOFI. The other question they asked is, in that conversation, I remember the meeting very clearly. Usually there's meetings where that defines where you go, right? And the second thing that we heard from the CEO at the time is, I gotta start my software early. It is in my critical path. So now that you've created the standard, can you now make it virtual such that I can start my work earlier, my software work earlier? And the third one was, I need consistency between the cloud and the edge. And since you're already in the cloud, you can solve that problem as well. And so I would love to say we're the geniuses that said we're going to solve this problem for the industry, but it actually came from a conversation with an OEM at the time that said, help us to solve that. And that was 3 years ago. We have over 200 members as part of this, this alliance that is SOFI. And it's from software providers to OEMs to silicon members. And yes, we have the usual suspects as part of that, that alliance. But we're also, and that's making a difference in being able to start your software early, having consistency across the software. But we're also seeing, though, is OEMs approaching us saying, I want to make my own silicon now. I'm not getting exactly what I want, I'm not getting the scalability that I want, and I'm not getting the consistency in my software. It's just not happening fast enough. And the other problem I'm having is the offerings that I'm getting is a walled garden. I'm getting this walled garden where I have to use everything from them, and so what am I, a wheel maker now? I mean, is there, how do I differentiate in a world where everything is provided off the shelf? And so we're also working very closely with the OEMs on something called compute subsystems that enables them to create chiplets and portions of that silicon to allow some independence in the world where they want more control over the user experience.
But then, it sounds like the goal was to do that without having to vary sort of the foundational technology.
Yes. Because fundamentally, what I would argue, and I would love to hear your points on this, what I would argue is you don't actually want to make your own silicon. You just want a way to control that supply chain and a way to control your software. So there's fundamentals that can just be taken care of. You want it being taken care of, and you want the guarantee of supply over time, because if it's used pervasively, now you have a guarantee of supply. So the making the silicon is a means to an end. The end is, I want more independence, I want more control. And so we're trying to solve the bigger problem, which is how do we give independence and control?
Yeah, it feels like I've heard a little less about I want to make my own silicon from the automakers in the last year, since it's become apparent, yes, there's silicon, and also, by the way, my capital budget just went to the cleaners, but that's a different panel, perhaps. Maybe not. Andy, so from your perspective, I mean, and you and Eileen both sound like have somewhat similar roles and goals, but from your perspective, I mean, what is it that what are the challenges that Ford has, or maybe if you want to speak generically about automakers have, in making use of the data? Because the data's been there forever. Mm-hmm. And talk about that. What are the challenges, both technical or maybe they're cultural, but what are the challenges?
The data, and to Abdullah's point, the software has been creeping in over time. And that was really, I don't know how many people in this room have rebuilt a carburetor. Probably not a whole lot. All right.
Well, I haven't really rebuilt one, but I've participated in that process and then put one back on a truck. So go ahead. I know what you're talking about.
Perfect.
Very primitive.
Sorry.
Yes, you.
So when you look at all the mechanics that go into a carburetor and this black magic that happens where air mixes with fuel to really drive that vehicle, you look at this thing and you go, wow, compared to software that's crept in, and now we have data about how it functions. And it seems so much simpler because we've grown up in the digital age and we're surrounded by iPhones that do anything for you. So I'd say one of the big challenges that we have is as this ecosystem grows and as the different components and suppliers play in, and we get that differentiation, the data needs to be thought of first. And very often in the past in automotive, to your point, Abdullah, as well, data is thought of last. It's just something that's there. It's log files. It's something that's functioning just as part of the software, not pretty, and it's not really meant to be consumed. But when you can consume all of that across the vehicle and do it in an efficient manner and really mine that data, that's where you get the gold. And I think having that Rosetta Stone, per se, is one of the biggest challenges.
So software-defined vehicles, I mean, sort of the modern idea, the current and modern idea of a software-defined vehicle, will that make the data mining easier or harder?
As the software is thought of as the primary rather than just something that needs to run and replace the mechanical, I think it will really change this whole landscape. And it is changing the landscape, and we are seeing the benefits of that. And of course, if there's something else that you need, sometimes that hybrid approach of software in the vehicle and software in the cloud, how do you leverage the cloud to actually do some of that dirty work for you so that you're not pushing constant updates into the vehicle and hoping that you're going to get the penetration of the millions of vehicles already out on the road. So it's an evolving world of data, for sure.
Eileen, I want you to sort of speak to that. I mean, again, I know Mobilinsights is offering it to offering data to third parties, but I'm wondering, how difficult is that? I mean, it seems like if you just told me, it's like you can have access to all 14 Stellantis brands, the data from that, I would say, I don't have any idea what I could do with that. It seems like, I'm wandering into a huge forest and I don't know what I'm looking for. I mean, how do you do the curation of that, or do you?
Most definitely.
Talk a little bit about that if you could.
So Mobilinsights and some of our Stellantis software teams really do the work of collecting, normalizing, and optimizing our data coming off existing vehicles. And you need to realize that, some of this conversation about where we need to take the software-defined vehicle is great for the future, but we're talking about what do we do with connected vehicle car park today? How do we take that data and realize the value for the driver, for the OEM, and for the population level of drivers today? And so is it difficult? Yes, because of the fact that we have a variety of vehicle architectures, we have a variety of data restitution paths from the vehicle out to the cloud, and I'm suspecting this is, in fact, I know this is the case with every OEM, that the legacy systems were created they snuck up on us, and they were created in fits and starts without necessarily looking to that scale. So right now we're working on how do we, bring all that data to our third-party partners. And it is a large endeavor. It means that we may not be quite uniform across the car park yet, but the objective is to build teams that can even out that data. Now, when you think about will software make it easier? Yes, if the software engineers partner with data engineers to really look at defining software with the data first, right? Because connected vehicles are all about the data. Until you have data coming off of that vehicle, and of course we take the opportunity to push data onto the vehicle, but the data coming off the vehicle is truly the gold. To build services for the retail driver, such as roadside assistance or parking, assistance, but also to build systems or drive systems that really foster the greater good. So when we can get volumes of data off of the aggregated car park, not just Stellantis vehicles, but across multiple OEMs, all of a sudden you can see fine-grained traffic patterns, much more accurate than what the connected data from phones is providing right now. We could get localized weather data, all of which feeds into a safer traffic environment, better understanding of the mobility ecosystem for better design. So again, it's benefiting the population level as well as the Stellantis drivers themselves.
So I want to sort of send this question down the line and ask each of you to sort of answer it in a way that's relevant to your respective companies and roles. But I was thinking about this morning as I was driving in, stuck in traffic that I couldn't do anything about. I was thinking, why can't my connected vehicle tell me that there's an accident 2 miles ahead? But anyway, but that was this. It's like, look, I mean, there's all sorts of functions and features and capabilities and computing power that I might want on my next vehicle. But there's also a price point that I'm willing to pay. And obviously it's different for different types of brands, but there's a limit. And I think we're kind of literally, as we speak, hitting that limit in terms of price point, certainly in this market. So how are you looking at this issue of, wait a minute, we've got to be able to sell vehicles that people can afford to buy. We've got to pick and choose. And Abdullah, I'll ask you to sort of start from your perspective at VW, but kind of go down the line and this sort of, this kind of, whoa, there's a cost pressure here that we've really got to deal with is affecting all of this.
That's a good point, because cost is very important for the customer, for everybody. But when you start really looking like at the problem that you described, for example, today we haven't really we are working on it, but we haven't worked as hard as we should, the OEM, and start really also sharing data, vehicle to vehicle, which is going to be very demanding once we start thinking of autonomous driving, et cetera, et cetera. Because to get, let's say we are a small player in North America, for example. Volkswagen is 3% of the market, okay? But some places else in the world we're big, right?
Yeah.
So
China,
our
Europe.
data in Europe, for example, shared among VW or VW Group vehicle, it's very valuable for the customer. But alone, again, it's very valuable to what you have right now. And sharing information, we could really have the intelligence to say, okay, there is an accident, or there is bad weather, or something like that. Today, most people, they depend on their Google or Waze or whatever system that you use, but you could see it coming down 75 from up north, everybody exiting at the same thing. Don't exit, because we moving the traffic jam from 75 to the back roads, right? There isn't good communication. Now, data that we are collecting from the car should serve us and our customer very well, okay? One is our biggest concern is safety and security of our customers, and have them have a great experience with our product. So that's an important piece. But also it gives us an insight of how our components, our subsystems performing. Somebody asked a question early on, can the car tell you that the alternator is going to fail, or I'm going to have this problem or that problem, or the light comes on in the dash and you get anxious as a customer. You don't know that it's yellow, it's not red, whatever. It doesn't mean anything to the customer. Just it's an anxious. How could we really minimize that? How can we also learn from our car, communicate with our customers? And we're working on systems right now that allow us to do that. Okay? Because when engineers, they designed the car, they were solving a problem, and once the system worked, they're done. They didn't realize there's a lot more involved when you're dealing with software and security and all kind of type of stuff. It's not just to make something work. So we've learned, for example, in our connected side, that when we want to collect data from there was a lot of garbage coming out of the car. Mm-hmm. Every time you turn the switch, there's a lot of error message. Do we need to tell the customers all? No. It's you have to write algorithm and so on to figure out how to clean the data. But that's a big piece. The other thing is, again, the car have so much software and so much technology that need to constantly be but it need to be updated, need to be refreshed. And you have to have that path available and make it also very convenient for the customer. And there's some great car companies out there that they master that. Okay, one of them is Tesla, obviously, everybody knows that. And you have to do that. You have to take advantage of the technology you have in the vehicle. So.
Andy, can I sort of ask you to address, as you're looking at this, we could do everything, but you can't. So how do you go about picking and choosing at Ford?
Yeah, the three big things in my mind are really that just overall cost optimization of the platform and the cost, and then the life cycle. Because, of course, vehicles are on the road 10 to 12 years at least these days. And they're just lasting longer and longer and keep on running. Who carries around a 12-year-old iPhone and still uses it? Maybe someone's kids, they use it and they drop it on the floor. But I think that was maybe an iPhone 5. No one would use that. It probably won't even work.
I was going to say Apple's taking care of that.
Yeah. They've obsoleted it. So we have to look towards the future, all OEMs, in terms of how do you support that vehicle in the long run? And you may choose to really push newer and newer experiences into the vehicle, but at a certain point, the vehicle won't support it without hardware upgrades. And it's not so easy as to just go to the phone store and swap out your phone when you have the vehicle. That overall optimization and ongoing balance that we do, I think connected vehicle data has been a great enabler, because we get to see how do customers use their vehicles, what is important to them. Maybe something that was thought of as super cool is really not being used.
Hasn't Ford done that? And I can't remember what the feature was, but hasn't Ford said, look, you know what, people are not using XYZ feature, we're just gonna delete it.
We call it reductive design, and it is, there was a recent news story about the self-parking, and that was optimized out of the vehicle because very few customers were using it. It cost money to maintain and keep up to date. So it's really balancing all those three pieces together, and it's a fine dance.
From ARM perspective, I mean, the sort of cost pressures, how do you respond to that? Or what do you advise your customers to do to respond to that from the?
When you look at cost, you got to look at it. I look at it in several different ways. One is R&D, right? And you've probably read in the news, different OEMs hiring 300 software engineers here, 500 here, right? There's not enough software engineers in the world at the level we're going at. So one is R&D and time to market. That's all cost for a car manufacturer. So I spoke earlier about the reuse of software across the vehicle. The ability to write software before the vehicle or the hardware is ready. So that's the virtual platform stuff that we're working on. The ability to scale that software across different solutions. Power and performance go kind of hand in hand in cost inside of a car, right? The more power, the more infrastructure you need, and the cost goes up. And so you do want bespoke solutions across different models so you can optimize that. But then if your software works holistically, now you've got an optimized hardware cost with a software that's reusable, right? So that's one bucket of costs that we really focus very, very specifically with the OEMs around creating these compute subsystems that's doing more of the work for the ecosystem, so we can amortize the cost of some of the basic stuff, and the ecosystem can then leverage those basic components. We have over 20 billion developers, and so leveraging that entire ecosystem of developers on an architecture, then they can reuse and we can amortize that cost. So that's another way to reduce the cost. The other thing that I have a keynote that I do that says software-defined vehicles is survival for the OEMs. And I truly believe it is, because as the explosion of software, you're just not going to be able to get it all done in time to keep the production line. And so you're going to need to have some capability of software-defined vehicles. But it also opens up new business models. And we've had start and stops on that as people have tried that. That's going to happen in industry when you're starting something new. But I don't think it's failed. I don't think that's the end of the road for new business models for OEMs. I still think there's a possibility to open up new business models where you can buy new capabilities through software in your car. Does that open up a new revenue stream? Because we do need to balance that P&L at the end of the day. I'm sure these guys know that very well.
Yeah. Actually, Eileen, maybe you can pick up on the idea of the revenue stream, because that's what Mobilinsights is about, right? You're trying to enable that.
Right. And I would say, your original question was the tipping point between vehicle cost, and I would also say, I referenced that consent of the data, right? Mm-hmm. So both of those are key points. So as we build the software-defined vehicle, and as we build these features to add to the vehicle and deprecate from the vehicle, to what end? Right? It's got to be for the value of the customer. The customer has to realize value from anything that we do, right? Because otherwise they're not going to A, pay the cost, or B, consent to whatever, objective that we have. Now, I would say when you talk about new business models, that path has been taken for subscription-based features, or, adding pay per feature. I would say one opportunity that we have it's a current opportunity is building value outside the vehicle from that connected vehicle data. How do you take that very precise location data and enable services for the driver, again, that are outside the vehicle, but really build value to their life by giving you either, again, roadside assistance, or you referenced, there's traffic up ahead. Shouldn't your connected vehicle be able to route you around that in a more precise way, right? So I would say that yes, the North American markets, have a challenge in terms of pricing, but right now I think it's important that anything we do in the vehicle builds that value for the driver or for the owner, the fleet owner, so that they can realize the value of their investment.
So throughout this conversation so far, there's been references to the need for collaboration, and I want to kind of ask, kind of bring that forward a little bit. And Abdullah, I'll come back to you. In terms of collaboration, has Volkswagen's view of what makes a good collaboration in this area changed? What kinds of deals and arrangements or partnerships are you willing to consider now that maybe you wouldn't have, the company would not have in the past? Or I'm just kind of interested in your view of kind of what is a smart collaboration for an OEM to make at this point.
Sure. Actually, OEM always collaborated on certain topics among themselves. But now when you start dealing with this new world that we're dealing with, the software-defined vehicle or whatever you want to call it, or the technology-driven, there is different players out there that you really need to figure out what partnership you need to form with. Because you can't do that stuff on your own. You are kidding yourself if you think, I'm going to go and hire 5,000 engineers or 10,000 software engineers and the problem is going to go away or brings. You got to build partnership with the right technology companies. They might be a competitor. You might be fearful of them or whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to work on true partnership and create that level of collaboration. And there's a lot of waste. All the three companies here, we build our own back end. Like, why? What value did it add, right? What's so secret about it? Just, at the end of the day, there is a lot of waste and we need to watch for that. Like, on platform, at least Volkswagen is big enough that we share platform among our different brands between, all our brands. But it's the same thing here. It's like you really have to open up your mind that, this is a competency that you're not the best at maybe, and you need to find the right partners to work with, and also identify synergies and so on and so forth to be able to succeed in that space. Because at the end of the day, everything that you do, you have something in mind. You want to delight your customer and you want to give them a product that they enjoy and they could afford, okay? At least from our connected services in North America, we give it for free to the customer because safety and security is very important to us and to our customers. So, software is free. This sounds crazy, but
not really free.
It's not. But my point is, it's really important because also it serves us having the connected car to be able to update the modules for, let's say, the ABS unit or the engine or whatever. You could do those things over the air and take advantage of that. So that's really important. Something that always bothers me a lot personally when people start talking about monetizing data. If you start with that thinking, you're on the wrong path. You have to start thinking, what can I do to make my vehicle better and my customers thrill about it? And then everything will fall in place. But if you start like everybody in the tech world, people are tired. I don't know how many people still have their Facebook account or whatever. They're tired of people monetizing your data and doing all kind of crap with it. So,
well, and it does seem like they're less tolerant of it with the car
absolutely
than they would be with the phone. That's a whole different panel, but it does seem that way.
And back again, our software in the car is very critical. It's not if your PC like locks and reboot it, you don't want the car to lock on the highway. you know? So there is a lot of safety and security features that you have to worry about, redundancy, all kind of things. I mean, look at the airplanes. I mean, great lessons to be learned from the aircraft companies. They mastered systems engineering, you know? So it's pretty cool.
Andy, I'll kind of reframe the question a little bit for you because, and I'll start with a premise that you're free to knock down. I mean, again, several years ago, it seemed to me that automakers, and Ford, I would say Ford was one of them, were very suspicious or leery of doing, you know, deep deals with companies like Google because they look, you know, these guys, we know they know more about us than data. We don't know what we don't know. And we don't want to be taken, you know, out behind the woodshed by these guys. So we're just going to, like, you know, keep them out. Obviously now I think that's changed. And I guess I'm going to ask you, and again, from your experience and your role, how has that changed, or why has that changed? Is it that Google is nicer, or that you're smarter, or that you've you know, what is it that's changed so that now you have, you know, collaborations with Google and I think many other companies as well from the tech space?
Well, for sure. And it's one of those where you just can't stand alone. You can try and really go it alone, and unless you have something that's really your secret sauce, most people aren't interested just in that secret sauce. So, for example, you mentioned Google. So in our new vehicles, there's the Google Automotive Services as part of that. And it's not that we're not interested in the user interface in the vehicle, or that we're not interested. Google does a great job. People are very familiar with it. They have Android devices, and guess what? It plays well with Apple as well. So is that a place that we want to spend all of our time to really build up, to Dipti's point about finding all the software engineers just for that piece? Or can we leverage that partnership?
And use the engineers to do some, or the software people at Ford to do something else.
To be that differentiator.
So, you know, speaking of things that have snuck up on you, the end of our panel is sneaking up on me, and I did want to touch on one subject, and Dipti, I'm going to come to you with it because you could all speak to it, but I think you can as well. So, working against the push for scale and the push for commonality, I think, is geopolitics and trade politics. And you know, the United States doesn't want Chinese technology in American cars. You know, Europeans have got problems with China. China's got problems with stuff from the United States. I mean, how does that work from your perspective at ARM? Because, you know, I think, sounds like in a perfect world, it would be one thing for all, at least one foundation for all.
You're going to stick me with that question, the geopolitical question.
I saved it for you.
Yeah, it's a loaded question. Well, fortunately, we've had a lot of success throughout the world, worldwide. And so because we're a basic platform, you do see our pervasiveness in regions like China, in Asia, and the US. And so we're still, despite what you may have heard, there's still a lot of collaboration that's happening. SOFI is also relevant in China, and that ecosystem has embraced it. And so I think we have to respectful of all the laws and policies that we honor and follow, but at the same time, you're exactly right. We do have to work across boundaries, and we do as best as we can.
All right, we are at time. Thank you all so much for your time, and appreciate it, and everyone have a great rest of the show. Right.
Thank you.